Just in case you thought differently, Oregon's doing everything they can to stay competitive in the long run.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time. Once again, for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Got a great guest today. Got two great guests, as a matter of fact, one of the crossover variety. We're jam-packed on this episode, which is brought to you by our friends over at Intuit TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert. Oregon in the NIL space. What do you think about that? What do you think that looks like? How disconnected do you feel as a fan from what happens in that world to influence Oregon's roster? You are not as far away as you think. You really aren't. And guess what? Here's the proof. Awesome guest here on today's show, Director of Content over at Ducks Rising, one of the NIL collectives for Oregon athletes, Travis Rookley, joining me here on the show. Travis, everybody knows about Division Street because that's the most popular NIL collective that people are aware of. But talk about the work that you guys have been doing and how that is shaping Oregon athletics as they, seek to just continue remaining competitive in this space in a landscape that was kind of rolled out with not a ton of rules or guidelines or regulations. And it's, hey, how much do you care about it? And, well, it seems like you guys care a heck of a lot.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you got a, amazing background, a guy like Phil Knight, it's natural for the fan base to be a little bit complacent, obviously, when it comes to, the new world of NIL and participating in that. But, at Ducks Rising, we like to consider ourselves kind of the fan accessible collective. So, Division Street's taking in big donations and doing incredible work. But at Ducks Rising, we have a price point in membership as low as $10 a month. And it just gives fans the ability to, have their dollars go directly to the, team they're rooting for every Saturday. So for us, we feel like we're in on a new, pretty exciting model when it comes with being able to donate directly to a collective. But at the same time, our members are getting something out of it. So they're able to have access to like exclusive content we have over at Ducks Rising, interviews with players, interviews with coaches, access to the staff that's really, in our mind, kind of unparalleled in terms of what else you see out there, for a staff that's already a little bit tight-lipped, as I'm sure just having the ability to like be connected to them, and we're providing them with resources in a utility as a collective ourselves and getting them the support they need to, build their roster. So what's nice is having some of that connection come back and our members feeling like they have, kind of a somewhat of a line to some of the info, team news, recruiting news that comes directly from the staff themselves.
One of my favorite interviews in the world to watch is Dan Lanning right after practice, because he's trying to keep every answer as short as humanly possible so that he can go break down the film and figure out what they're going to be working on the next day. But in this space, Travis, this has all come about really just in the last couple of years in college athletics. I know it's still a relatively new space, but a lot gets made, particularly amongst fan bases, about Oregon and NIL, and they do this and they do that, and they're throwing out all this sort of stuff. And I don't feel like it's a fair depiction of what the NIL space is like for Oregon. You're in that space. What has it been like for you compared to, what other schools might have with their various NIL collectives?
Yeah, I mean, NIL is just naturally going to be the boogeyman in this day and age, for any time you're losing out on a recruit. So, anytime we beat, SC, Washington, Ohio State, all these schools out right now, they're naturally going to revert to, crying wolf about NIL, when in reality, that's not the situation. I mean, for us, I think the most powerful part of it has been seeing where the dollars are actually going and fans being able to play a role in that. So for us, like in our interviews with athletes and discussion with staff, like a huge thing right now has been us being able to recruit nationally, being a school in Eugene, and being able to use NIL dollars to like fly families out for games. If you're going into the example we got, we were having conversations with some of the personnel department. They were saying, hey, when we go into Texas, when we go into Florida and are sitting down with families who have an offer from University of Florida, University of Texas, whatever that is, you got to be able to make up for that distance gap somehow. And so one thing that I think one of the huge misconceptions out there is that NIL is going towards, fancy cars, brand new penthouses, if those even exist in Eugene. Crazy stuff like that, when in reality it's, helping us recruit. It's being able to fly, mom, dad, and grandparents out from Texas, East Coast, wherever, to attend home games, flying them out to road games. So there's just a lot of crazy stuff that gets reported. And I think that we see really like the top 1% of what these deals are, or the things that make the news. But in reality, we're keeping Oregon kids home because we can offer them an NIL scholarship over traditional 85. We're flying kids out whose families need to be out there. Like, these are just like day-to-day issues rather than these big crazy stories that get reported.
Yeah. How does that translate into, the big picture for Oregon, which is, they just won a Big Ten championship. The next step, of course, in football is go win a national championship. We all know that's what Oregon's primary goal is. But where does NIL, in your view, being immersed in it, fit into that discussion and just the process of what it takes to get there?
I mean, I think it's certainly a factor. Today's kids, it's just a different world when it comes to that. And this is the environment they're used to. This is, their peers 2-3 years above them have been part of this. So NIL is naturally part of these conversations. But for most kids, that's never going to trump relationships, staff, culture, family, stuff like that. And that's where Oregon stands out. I know a lot of people, like we talked about earlier, like to use NIL as the reason Oregon is getting these guys, but 95% of the guys we talk to, conversations we have, everything around the program comes back to these guys are wanting to come play in Eugene and build a winner because the environment that, Dan and his staff have cultivated. So I think moving into the Big Ten has been huge. That's another thing that comes up constantly in conversations, is like the switch to the Big Ten.
How often would you say that comes up when you're talking to kids?
Almost every conversation.
Really?
I think that they, I have a fondness for the Pac-12, having grown up in this footprint.
You and me both. R.I.P. Sweet Prince.
Those were the days. Like, I miss that, and part of me thinks it's crazy that we're playing in the Big Ten and traveling across the country. Especially,
it's wild.
I mean, you can convince me it's right for football. That if it's right for these other sports, I'm going to take a little longer. But having said that, I think what we maybe didn't know, because we love the Pac-12, is how much like negative recruiting was going on and how much it was costing us players we could have ultimately gotten otherwise. So I think that piece, combined with kind of the physicality, SEC presence that coach has brought along, I think that's really kind of supercharged the operation. And you see it, we used to be right around top 10 classes. Our best classes would be right around there. And now you're top 5 the last couple of years and can really make a run at number 1 this year.
I get the sense that financially, with your guys' collective and Ducks Rising, Oregon would be in the same situation had they still been in the Pac-12, because it sounds like, the community of Oregon, of course, wants to be great. And we all know Uncle Phil wants Oregon to win a national championship, and there's a lot of buy-in from various places to help make that happen. But it sounds like for kids on the recruiting trail, it's more about the branding of being in the Big Ten and just kind of the cachet that comes with that. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, and I think just like the national footprint of it, I don't know, prestige that comes with it. I mean, I think that Oregon had achieved kind of that like national brand status before they ever got in the Big Ten. And you still see recruits talk about, they grew up watching Oregon. Oregon was their dream school, uniforms, all that stuff. But I think that when you combine the uniforms, the explosiveness, the, creativity that Oregon was known for, then with the Big Ten footprint, Big Ten, prestige that comes with it. And then proof of concept. I mean, it's one thing to go into the Big Ten and, be 5-7 or 6-6, like our other Pac-12 brethren, but 13-0, that's obviously proving you can be here. So I think it's like the collective of all of that together, obviously puts us in a good spot moving forward.
Yeah. Going forward though, what happens next in this space? It feels like we're all kind of sitting around waiting for some piece of legislation or changes to the play at all time. And I feel like the playoff and realignment discussions have kind of superseded nationally the narrative in college football with regards to NIL, where it's just kind of sitting there. Do you feel like it's going to be this way for the next couple of years, or do you think there are going to be major changes that come to that landscape?
I know, I mean, it's obviously fluid and this stuff's changing every day. I think that, from what I know, most people at Oregon are expecting the House settlement to go through. But if that does, I mean, as far as we're concerned as a collective, like that puts our job and puts even a bigger importance on us. You know, if the playing field is being leveled across athletic departments, then collectives are going to be there to supplement. Collectives are going to be there to put yourself in front of somebody else. So as I think the House settlement is intended, and what it's probably going to do is just allow things to be a little more straight across the board when it comes to what departments themselves pay players. But for us, like that's like our big push right now. We're like grassroots, trying to get people involved, trying to build this thing, and trying to just kind of educate fans about what NIL is and why they need to be a part of it. Because, you know, a fan base like Oregon that is, you know, 12 months a year consuming news, you know, talking spring depth charts right now.
There are people who will listen to me 5 days a week all year round, Travis. They're out there. They're out there. Like,
Oregon is and should be leading the way on this type of stuff, given the fans we have. We just need to, like, what we at Ducks Rising want to do is kind of fill in those gaps for fans and let them know, like, hey, like, here's how to be part of the process. Here's what you're going to get out of it. Like, this is going to put us at the forefront moving forward. And this is going to continue to build, you know, a roster that's competing for championships every year.
Awesome. Great stuff. Travis Rickley, Director of Content over at Ducks Rising. Check him out on Twitter. Travis, thanks for stopping by, man. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Good to be with you.
And by the way, everyone, for those who don't know off the top of their head, because you're not a junkie like me, the House settlement gives everyone a $20.5 million payroll to pay from the athletic department, but collectives are not going to go anywhere because this is just a wild, crazy world. And let's keep adding wild craziness to it on Thursday. What do you need to know for Thursday? I will tell you what you need to know for Thursday. First, this episode brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates, only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. TurboTax.com.
It's Locked On Crossover once again. I'm Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers. He is Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Ducks. And if this sounds familiar, if you just feel like you saw us and heard us, it's because you did. And we are back, and we love talking a little college hoops. And it's one of the oldest rivalries in the Big Ten. No, I'm just kidding. But we do get part two in the Big Ten tournament, Spencer, as Indiana and Oregon, the Hoosiers and the Ducks, are going to be playing on Thursday afternoon in Indianapolis. And while I'm nervous for the matchup because of how good game one was, it should lead to what is going to be a really, really fun tournament game for part two.
You know, Jacob, some people are saying that this is laying a foundation for an on-court rivalry. Twice in 3 games, I tell you what, the sparks are going to be flying, tensions are going to flare, the officials are going to have to get a hold of this game early and often. They're going to have to put a firm grasp onto the conduct of everyone. No, but I think this is a weird spot to be. And you see this in conference tournaments from time to time where you're going, we're playing who? We just played them.
Yeah.
And how you handle that as a coach is different, right? There's no other time of the year where you play a team this close together. You play a team twice, but not on the heels of your most recent matchup. But I think the stakes for this game, just like the first one, Jacob, are far greater for Indiana than they are for Oregon, who, correct me if I'm wrong, still look like they're going to get into the tournament as, you know, kind of a fringe bubble team. but are solidly in there, which is strange because their coach is going out the door. But hey, Long Beach State last year, their coach was in the same position Mike Woodson's in, where he's on his way out the door, and we all know that. And then they won the Big West, surprisingly, and got to the NCAA tournament, and I think almost won a first-round game as like a 15 seed or something. So I think the Hoosiers have more to gain in this particular matchup than the Ducks. I do still expect Oregon to be very motivated. Number one, you want to have as big a winning streak as you can coming into the tournament. It's currently a 7-game heater. But number two, if Oregon's able to win this game in the next round, they'd go on and play Michigan State. And if Oregon wins that game, you're bumping up to a 4. Heck, you might even bump up to a 3 seed after currently being a projected 5 coming into this one. So I think, once again, Indiana has more to gain, but that doesn't mean there's nothing that benefits Oregon if they win.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we know, right, through the Sunday night bracketologies, depending on where you look, Oregon has been solidly at that 5 spot, and that's a scary spot to be. You know that, and everybody who watches college basketball knows the 5 seed is not where you want to be, especially with just how good college basketball is. But you're absolutely right. I think Indiana, thankfully, we handled business against Ohio State in the finale, which allowed us to be solidified for this Big Ten tournament spot as the 9 seed, taking on Oregon. And look, when you start looking up and down the Big Ten bracket, I like where both of our teams are because we've already beaten Michigan State. We went and beat them at Michigan State. So could we do it again? I don't know, but we
were going to do that. First. We had a 14-point lead at the half, but
you decided not to.
We don't want to do that.
Why do that? It's fun, but you wouldn't know that. And so now we get to take on Oregon again, where we had a chance to win, but Indiana did what Indiana does, and we let that dude for Oregon just knock it down from half court. Yeah, it was pretty deep. And you texted me immediately. You said, I knew it was in. I knew it was in. And we did too. But
I did.
I like the path for both of our teams. And for Indiana, I think we're in the tournament regardless of what happens in the Big Ten tournament. But we can still improve ourselves as an 11 seed and possibly get up to a 10. I think a 9's probably too much unless we just go on to win the whole thing. But this game itself, I just am really excited. Plus for the Big Ten tournament as a whole.
Yeah, and that guy's name is Jackson Shellstad for the Indiana crowd.
I just don't want to say his name in case he decides to come back around.
I do. You know, if it gives Hoosiers fans any comfort, in their most recent game against Washington on Sunday, Shellstad couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Good.
He walked up to the line and missed 2 free throws late in the game, and Oregon was still able to put it away. No one could hit a free throw. He's like an 85. He's like an 85% foul shooter, and he went up there, bricked the first, and then just guided the second one, and it barely hit the rim. And I was just going, man, get it all out now. Frankly, I'm glad Oregon found a way to win that game. But you know, that matchup against Washington really did showcase Oregon's depth. You know, Nate Biddle had a career high 36 points. You know, him being brilliant was a big part of what Oregon had going for it. It was really the only consistent thing that they had going for it. I thought the defense was good in stretches there, but this game is just so fascinating to me, Jacob, because if Oregon wins this one but loses to Michigan State, that to me is a bit of a different vibe entering the NCAA tournament than if you just lose this one. Now, you're losing to a tournament team either way, and then you're going on to face another one. But as I mentioned, if Oregon picks up 2 wins here, maybe they need some help, but I don't know how a neutral site win against the top seed in the Big Ten who won the regular season championship, I don't know how that doesn't push someone out of being a 4 seed in bracketology. Now, there are a lot of metrics that go into that and how it gets calculated and what matters and whatnot, but Oregon is sitting at 8 quad 1 wins. That's one of the highest totals in all of college basketball. And if they had that road win at Michigan State, which they should have, they'd probably be in the 4 seed spot. But that's what I think is, you know, the biggest thing. I mean, if Oregon goes on an absolute heater, wins 4 straight in 4 days and wins the Big Ten tournament, I bet they're looking at a 3 seed at that point. I'd be hard pressed to see them being anything lower than a 4, and they'd probably be a 3. But I think for Indiana in this spot, you know, they're most likely in the field. I think you win this game against Oregon, and Hoosiers fans can go to sleep on Thursday night knowing, Indiana's getting in the tournament and there's no bid stealing questions. And Oregon fans, frankly, I'm sure are grateful. I know I am, to not be in that position, because it's where they've been the last couple of years. On the bubble, fighting to get in, last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out, all that sort of stuff.
It's not fun, man.
It's not. It's not. You just want to be in. And that's the good news for Oregon fans, is win or lose this game against Indiana or the next one against Michigan State, they're into the tournament. Once you get there, I've seen an 8 seed make a run to the national championship game and an 11 seed go to the Final Four as recently as last year. So I think that's the good news for Oregon when you look big picture at this game. But still, it's one that, I'd love to see Oregon find a way to win. And that's kind of been their MO in the last several weeks. Just find a way, figure it out. The mantra that goes around the program from Dana Altman is sometimes you, sometimes me, always us. They've really lived that this year. Jackson Shellstad and TJ Bauma can't score. Nate Biddle's going to score for all of them on Sunday afternoon. That's the way it goes sometimes. But, as we'll get to later, that big man matchup is something I'm going to be watching again, Biddle against Ballo.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating. And I think you're spot on for Indiana. I mean, we should be in. We absolutely should. If you lose to Oregon, we're probably stressing on Selection Sunday, but still get in. If you beat Oregon, I think you're good. And at that point, it's just gravy, right? And for the Hoosiers, and Mike Woodson scared all the Hoosiers fans saying maybe he's leaving too early. No, that's okay. You go ahead. We'll find a new coach. But winning against Oregon would be awesome. And then having another shot at Michigan State, who is solidly a 2 seed right now in the NCAA tournament, would go a long way for either the Hoosiers or the Ducks. And you mentioned matchups, and that's what this came down to last time. That's what it will come down to this time. We're talking the biggest matchups as Indiana and Oregon meet once again in the Big Ten tournament. That's coming up here on this Locked On Crossover Edition.
First, this episode brought to you by Factor Meals. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I'm someone who has a really busy schedule and doesn't always have time to make food, and Factor is here to help people like me. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Check them out at Factor Meals today.
And we're back here on the Locked On Crossover Edition. It's Ducks and Hoosiers. We meet again in the Big Ten tournament. And you and I both agree there's a lot at stake for this game in terms of who wins, who loses, what it means for the NCAA tournament. But this was an exciting game that came down to the wire just a few days ago, it seems like, when Indiana came out to Eugene for the very first time. And you hear people talk about matchups, Spencer, all the time, but it really did come down to that in this game, whether it be the big men inside or the guards on the outside knocking down shots. It has to be for Indiana, I think, Oumar Ballo and Malik Reneau, who played fine but did not play great. Malik Reneau was questionable to make that road trip. He was there, played a good game against Washington. Oregon was not so great. But Indiana, it's no secret, man. Half our points in the first matchup came from inside the paint. We have to do that again. And if we can do that, hey, we lost the rebounding battle. We can't do that against Oregon. I'm sorry, we can't. If we can change some of those things, Indiana's going to have a good chance. But my guess is Oregon's going to have a game plan for that.
Yeah, and the adjustments between Dana Altman and Mike Woodson are one of the fascinating elements because, as we mentioned earlier, they met so recently, and that was such a tightly contested game. And I think that it's something you can choose. Of course, you can choose to do anything, but you can choose to be optimistic if you're an Indiana fan, which is, hey, this was a tight back and forth game really all throughout, and that was on Oregon Senior Day in Eugene.
Yep.
Now you go to a neutral site. There's not going to be a major crowd advantage, and if anything, it'll be in favor of Indiana, right?
Indianapolis, baby.
Yeah. So I think that if the Hoosier fans show up, this may feel a bit like a road game, and Oregon just went on the road in a tough crowd against a bad, dead last Washington team and struggled to win. They were the better team for long stretches in that game, but then they just kind of went quiet and the offense disappeared when Nate Biddle wasn't going absolutely bonkers up in Seattle. But you mentioned earlier the Jackson Shellstad shot, and by the way, I have the text to Jacob to prove it that I did indeed think that shot was going in once he put it up, even though it was shot from up in Portland. But I think that for Oregon in this spot, they've got to be able, if they're going to hit 73, 75 points, they've got to be able to get one of their guards going, whether that's TJ Bamba driving to the basket or Jackson Shellstad hitting shots. Keyshawn Bartholomew is always an Energizer Bunny, big shot sort of guy. I mean, he really is big shot Bartholomew. Like, he had, a 3-pointer against Washington to end a 5-minute field goal drought, which is Oregon's specialty at times on offense. But, when Shellstad isn't there, it really does need to be Bamba. Bartholomew can give you that scoring in spurts. I don't know if he can sustain it because he's really, really small, but he is a huge part of what Oregon does offensively. But either Bamba's got to get going to the rim or Shellstad has to be able to find his outside shot again. In the first matchup, he was just 2 of 7 from 3, but that's better than what he did on Sunday when he didn't knock down a triple. So, if Oregon's able to have that presence on the outside consistently, not, oh, wow, Bamba had 8 points in 5 minutes and then 2 points the rest of the game. No, that's not what Oregon needs here. You and I talked ahead of the first matchup about the scoring inside and how important that was, and it's a big part of what Indiana did, but it was a pretty solid part of what Oregon did too. They went just 6 of 25 from beyond the arc, the Ducks did in the first matchup, and found a way to put up 73 points and win the game. They did that by getting to the free throw line, but that's because they attacked. They got inside. They forced the issue, put the onus on officials, and Mike Woodson had his own thoughts about the officiating in that game, which definitely...
All we can hope is the same crew as in Indy. All we can hope.
I think based on the free throw disparity, that's what Oregon would certainly be hoping for. But, it turns out, when Oregon went to the Big Ten, a question I frequently got on the show, Jacob, was, hey, now that we're in the Big Ten, should Oregon expect to have better officiating, than the Pac-12? And look, the Pac-12 set the bar so low. I mean, so low.
R.I.P.
I know. R.I.P. Forever and always. Sweet Prince. But they set the bar low. But I think what we found out this year wasn't just a Pac-12 thing.
It's everywhere.
It's
They're
just
everywhere.
a national problem.
Yeah.
You can find teams and coaches in any conference. Yeah. I challenge you to go and run an anonymous poll of basketball or football coaches who would say overall the officiating in this league is good. SEC, Big Ten, wherever. I don't think you would hit a majority in any league in the country, Jacob. I really don't.
You wouldn't.
And unfortunately, that's a discussion point when you're looking at the matchup like you and I are. Because, that is a big gap. Now, Indiana shot 25 threes, but Oregon shot 25 threes. Indiana was going inside just as much as Oregon was. Yeah, there were plenty of missed calls that went both ways. I did think Oregon got the benefit of the doubt there, kind of being on their home floor. So I wonder if that flips. 19 of 21 versus 3 of 7. That was the first game. And if that continues again, I mean, good luck to whichever team is on the 3 of 7 side of things at the charity stripe.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be somewhat even. And I'm not saying it has to be the exact same in every single game. That's impossible. But what you don't want to see also is it be called, and this frustrates me so bad nowadays in college basketball, and it seems like this is the sport it happens the most, where they officiate the first 20 minutes one way, and then it's like they get the phone call, they have the discussion, whatever the case, they read social media, and they completely flip how they officiate the second half. And it's like, no, because the coaches are going in and making adjustments based off how you called the first half, and then you completely change it. And look, we could sit here and debate about officiating all we want to, but it still does come down to who's going to execute their game plan and who's going to make shots. And what's exciting for Indiana is in the game against Oregon, we made 9 threes. That doesn't really happen for us very often. If you haven't noticed, we're a terrible three-point shooting team. We always have been under Mike Woodson. But Trey Galloway was the leading scorer the first time around, and he just had one of his best games of this season. In our finale against Ohio State this past weekend, they're calling it Trey Galloway Day, as he's been here for 18 years. And so Indiana is coming in feeling pretty good about ourselves. The question is, can you score other than the three ball? You hit 9 threes, but only scored 64 points on the road. Not going to get it done. But on a neutral site against what I would say is a streaky 3-point shooting team from Oregon, they're dangerous, but they're not always on. We rely on the paint points and the paint touches, and then we get our guards involved. And for the Indiana Hoosiers, man, if we don't turn the ball over and we just get down low and get to the low block, whether it's Ballo, whether it's Renew, whether they play together or just play by themselves, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see because it's Mike Woodson and he wakes up and decides what he wants to do that day. But the Hoosiers have the advantage inside. We can't get out rebounded, we can't get out hustled, and we can't get out mad. If we do those things correctly, I think we have a really good chance to win this game. And like we talked about a second ago, improve our NCAA tournament seeding because we do want to try and make a run in Mike Woodson's last season. And I know Oregon believes they can make a pretty good run too.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon can beat anybody in this tournament. They might be able to lose to anybody in this tournament as well.
That's fair.
But it's kind of one of the things that makes it interesting. By the way, the sun is setting over here. I don't know why I suddenly look like a cherry tomato for those watching on YouTube, but like I look I'm getting.
You're real flustered about this game.
Yeah,
yeah, we're on him. Yes, he's worried. He's scared.
I am literally taken aback by what I am looking at on camera here. Like this is so, and I promise it is just. I am not that nervous about this game because Oregon's season isn't on the line just yet. But I want to go back to the matchup that we highlighted in the first meeting, and that's Nate Biddle and Umar Ballo.
Yep.
You know, Ballo had a stretch in the second half where he couldn't be kept off the offensive glass. I think he had 3 offensive rebounds on 1 possession, and he had 4 for the game. And he didn't have a ton of shots, but he was 5 of 7 from the floor going up against Biddle, who had a good game at the defensive end and passing the ball. You know, he was just 3 of 10 from the field. Ballo really frustrated him a bit. And coming off a career-high 36-point Sunday against Washington, I'm interested to see how that matchup plays out because, you know, Ballo is thicker than Nate Biddle, but Biddle is far more skilled than Ballo is and has a more complete, well-rounded offensive game. So I once again see that matchup as the most pivotal one. You know, whoever ends up guarding Jackson Shelstad, yeah, that's important too. But I think those 2 guys are the premier players, and Biddle did enough. You know, he was 8 of 8 at the foul line in the first matchup, and, you know, he did a great job defensively with 4 blocks, and he had a season-high 6 assists as well. But is he able to be a more efficient scoring version of himself? When he is, I think that is when Oregon is really at their best.
Indiana in Oregon, the first game on Thursday. It's the 9 and the 8 seed in the Big Ten tournament. The winner gets the Big Ten champ, the Michigan State Spartans. He is Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Ducks. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers.
Hope you enjoy those crossovers as much as I do, and hopefully Oregon's coming away with a win. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.